Good morning, my firsties. I miss you guys. I know that I am making this video for my specific first grade students because I miss them and I want them to see my face and I want them to know that I miss them. But I know that there's a lot of other firsties and some second grade students and some third grade students listening too, and I want to welcome them. And if this is your first video, go back and watch chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 so that you can pick up where we're at and so that you don't miss any of this great, amazing story that we're listening to this week and next week. We're going to get started with I think it's chapter 5 already, and I'm going to try to do the same thing I did last time, show more of the pictures and less of me. But just know, my first graders, I am thinking about you every single day. I hope you're following along. And at the end of this, I am going to send you a link to a quiz on Quizlet that I found over this book. So pay attention and do a great job taking your Quizlet. I'll send it through our Blooms app, parents, so that you'll have a direct link to that. And those of you that are not on my Blooms and you're from another state or another school, you guys can always go to Quizlet and then just do a search in there for Leroy Ninker Saddles Up, and you should be able to find that Quizlet too, so you guys can take it too and see how well you did on your comprehension skills. Okay, you guys, I am ready for chapter 5. Sorry about that. Okay, now we're ready for chapter 5. Okay. Leroy Ninker went into the kitchen of Unit 12. He opened the refrigerator and looked inside. Leroy had viewed many westerns at the Bayou Drive-In Theater. He had seen a great deal of purple mountains and wide open plains. He had watched cowboys battling injustices and crossing rivers and eating beans. But he could not recall one movie where the cowboy said aloud exactly what it was that he was feeding his own horse. "Hay?" said Leroy. He lifted up his hat and scratched his head. "Oats?" But he didn't have any hay and he didn't have any oats. "Dag flibberet," said Leroy Ninker. Outside of Unit 12, Maybelline let out a long, loud whinny that had a question mark on the end of it. "Okay," Leroy shouted to the horse. "I am making you some grub. Yippee-yi-yo!" Leroy grabbed a big pot and filled it with water. He turned the heat on high and he filled another pot with tomato sauce. Patty Lamarck had said nothing about whether or not Maybelline liked spaghetti, but didn't everyone like spaghetti? After Leroy Ninker added the noodles to the pot, he went outside and leaned up against his horse. Her flank was very warm. She was extremely comforting horse to lean against. Maybelline turned her head and looked at Leroy, and then she put her nose up in the air and sniffed. "That's right," said Leroy. "I am cooking you some grub." Maybelline whinnied. "It's spaghetti," said Leroy. "I hope you like spaghetti." It turned out that Maybelline did like spaghetti. She liked a lot of spaghetti. The horse ate the first pot of noodles in a single gigantic gulp. As far as Leroy could tell, she didn't even bother to chew. When she was done, Maybelline lifted her head from the pot and looked at Leroy in a meaningful way. Leroy said, "Yippee-yi-yo!" and he went running back into Unit 12 with the empty pot and started boiling more water. He opened another jar of spaghetti sauce and he made a second pot of spaghetti. After that, he made a third pot of spaghetti. By the time Maybelline was done eating, the stars were shining in the sky and the moon was looking down, and there was not one noodle of spaghetti left in Unit 12. Leroy Ninker was very tired. He leaned against his horse and he looked up at the stars. But when he closed his eyes, what he saw was Patty Lamarck. Her face was as big as the moon, and her mouth was opening and closing and opening and closing. Leroy knew exactly what she was saying. Patty Lamarck was reciting item 3. "Maybelline," said Leroy. Maybelline turned and put her nose on Leroy's face. "I have remembered item 3, said Leroy Ninker. "Item 3 is that you are the kind of horse who gets lonesome quick." Maybelline nickered. "But you cannot fit inside Unit 12, said Leroy Ninker. Maybelline shook her head. "Okay, then," said Leroy. "I will stay here with you." He took off his boots. He removed his lasso. He loosened his belt. And then he lay down at Maybelline's feet. He put his hat over his eyes. He sighed a happy sigh. "I have made a lot of mistakes in my life," said Leroy Ninker from underneath his hat. "I have done some things that I wish I had not done. I have taken some wrong turns." There was a long silence. Leroy moved his hat and looked up at Maybelline. The horse looked down at him. She was listening. "There was a time in my life when I was a thief," said Leroy, "but I am reformed now." "I hope you don't judge me, Maybelline, because I truly am a changed man." Maybelline let out a small chuff of air. "Oh, Maybelline," said Leroy, "you are my horse. For me, you shine brighter than every star and every planet. You shine brighter than all the universe's moons and suns. There are not enough yippee-i-os to describe you, Maybelline. I love you." Leroy Ninker had never imagined that he could string so many words together at once. It was the longest speech of his life. He looked up at Maybelline, and she looked down at him. Leroy's cheeks felt hot. He lowered his hat so that it covered his face. "Good night, Maybelline," he whispered. Leroy closed his eyes, and he thought very hard. Had his heart been waiting for Maybelline to come along so that it could open wide and he could speak all the beautiful words that had been hiding inside of him? It was an amazing concept to consider, and the cowboy fell asleep considering it. And that, my friends, is the end of chapter 5. But I've got some questions for you. Actually, I got a lot of questions for you today. Let's talk a little bit. What would you feed a horse? If you had a horse that came to your house, what would you feed it? Do you think that spaghetti was a good choice? I don't know. What would you have done if your horse didn't fit through your door? Would you have stayed outside with your horse all night long he didn't have a blanket, he didn't have a pillow, but yet he laid down at Maybelline's feet to keep her company? How do you think Leroy is feeling right now? Do you think he's happy? Do you think Maybelline's happy? Do you think that she's going to be lonesome with him out there sleeping underneath the stars? I hope not. I hope you are getting a sense that Leroy is reformed, that he is changed, and he's trying to make good decisions instead of bad decisions. Are you guys doing the same thing? You're at home and you're not at school with me. Are you guys making good decisions? Are you reading and writing and doing your math? Are you watching your math videos? I hope you are. I hope you are enjoying seeing my face. I miss seeing yours. And I hope you can feel that from my heart to yours. I love you guys, and hopefully we'll see each other soon. But stay tuned for chapter 6.